Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll call the meeting of this joint meeting of the City of Fergus Falls and Fergus Falls School District to order. And I guess the first item on the agenda is an update with the roundabout and traffic control measures near Kennedy School. So we'll call on Jerry Ness.
Okay. Are we introducing everybody, or we're not going to do that? I'm fine not doing that. If that's, I think we know.
I think we're good on
Kind
it.
of helpful, actually.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, I'm Ben Shire, I'm the mayor of Fergus Falls. Darren Appert, City Council.
Natalie Knudsen, School Board.
Mark Maston, Business Manager of the school.
Blaine Danielson, School Board.
Jerry Ness, Superintendent.
Steve Vegas, School Board. Jim Fish, City Council.
Brent Thompson, City Council.
Melanie Cole, School Board.
Anthony Hicks, City Council.
Women.
Women.
Krista Hagberg, Ward 1 candidate.
Caroline Gustafson, Ward 4 candidate.
Kyle Berger, Chief of Police.
Scott Rachel, City Council.
Brian Beal, City Planner.
Rod Speedall, City Council.
Andrew Bremsel, City Administrator. Got some staff back here.
Red dice.
Let me look, Tyson Ichek, More Engineering.
Dan Hampton, More Engineering.
Kate Miner with Stoneburg Engineering.
Amy Baldwin, Community Development Director.
Bill Sunmore, Finance Director.
Len Taylor, Public Works Director.
Brian Navarro, City Engineer.
Lynn Olson, City of Fergus Falls.
Okay, we're ready? Thank you. The title is a roundabout, just update, but to be very honest, we at the school, we're very pleased with the way the traffic is flowing right now. And let me tell you about some of the changes that we've made. The Fryeburg Parking Lot, which is near door O, which is the big steps, so off the Fryeburg side, we have changed that parking lot. You used to be able to drive into the parking lot and then go back out through the center. Well, we've filled that in with 8 new parking spots, and so people have to follow all the way through the whole parking lot, which in engineering terms, I guess we're queuing up more cars in our parking lot, and along with the right turn lane, it's flowing very well. So before school, even with a left turn, lots of people are still making left turns out of the parking lot. It is flowing very well. After school, we put up cones, and they don't run over them too much, but they go right turn only after school. So it's actually flowing very well. We also have added a crossing guard between the Kennedy building and the Roosevelt building before and after school. We had just had it after school, but we added before as well, so students are feeling much safer, and parents are feeling much safer having their kids walk between schools. I remember the call I received that to go to hockey practice, the mom would come to Kennedy, pick up their child and drive them to Roosevelt across the street because she was afraid of the traffic coming across Randolph. And now with the crossing guard, we've alleviated that concern. We've also, at the end of last year and continuing into this year, when the buses come out of lot number 2, which is the bus parking lot, most of them are taking a left and then going down Burlington versus adding more traffic to Fryeburg, trying to take a left or a right there. So we've made major improvements, I think, just with these items. Kind of speaking for the board here, we have a lot of needs we're remodeling our Roosevelt building, we're remodeling Heritage. So at this time, we're just thinking that the board, from the board's point of view, we'd love you to do a roundabout, but we're really not interested in contributing to the cost of that roundabout at this time because of the measures that we've made. So I can open up for questions.
Do you still see the need for roundabout?
I think it would greatly help flow. A few times though, I've gone down to Randolph, or down Randolph, Fryeburg at before 3:35, and the traffic is cleared, and I've been able to make a left turn to Fryeburg because it's just our principals. We had an administrative meeting today. They agreed. we have more police presence, thank you Kyle Bergeron. That is making a huge difference because Abram Silbernagel and Matt Seaberg, they are there regularly before and after school. People are behaving better with their traffic flow. Presence makes a big difference. So it's going very well.
I would agree with Jerry, everything he said. I think just those minor changes that were made has made a big impact on some of the traffic issues and safety issues that we've seen in previous years. And like I said, I would just echo everything that Jerry said. I think for the most part, things are running much more efficiently and safely up there with some of those changes.
Burlington's being utilized a ton more, and I'm sure that's on the radar for improvement. That would maybe be something to think about.
I think next year, and Brian could probably speak to it, but I think we're looking at a overlay, pavement overlay, so make it a better secondary road.
Reconstruction, well, yeah, no, that particular area there on Burlington, we're evaluating that with the other projects south of Kennedy School and everything, but yeah, agreed, that road surface is right there.
And I think the only other really, probably stoppage for flow on Fryeburg is the crosswalk. When they hit that, it tends to stop traffic a little bit as people are going over to the Armory parking lot or something like that. So that tends to start backing up a little bit. But otherwise, I think it's been going pretty good there.
Our fear of improving, is it East Mount Faith and Burlington, that area you're improving, is it's going to start around school starting time rather than in the spring or June. And I'm hoping you go earlier.
That's what we're trying to, that's
Yeah.
why we're doing it and everything. It's a fairly significant project, so.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on a few other processes as far as funding for that right
Can I ask you, the last time we showed up and we said unequivocally that we were interested in assisting and making that happen, and of course now, just 3 months later, it's shifted quite a bit. Do you, absent the school in putting on the roundabout, is there interest by the city to do that? Is that something that's on your radar, just to smooth out traffic in that area, or was the fact that we were proponents of it making a big difference in your planning?
I guess I call him Brian, the city engineer, but I was, when you guys came to us and talked about safety concern around a school, of course, that got our attention, and that got, say, well, what do we need to do to get this done? Now that you've come back and say it's not as pressing an issue, or you don't see the safety concern, well, obviously it lessens,
Right.
speeding.
now. Yeah, and that's correct, and if we'll, from that last meeting, we talked about with the presentation of the traffic school study, and since then, I solicited, not SRF, but I went to our local, Moore Engineering. I see Dan and Tyson are here along with Kate. They specialize in roundabouts and everything as well. So they have provided a proposal and kind of a work scope. So if we do want to proceed with that, so I guess for sake of time and what they've already done with work and everything, if they could give a presentation. They got a small PowerPoint here along with a proposal and everything. So I said, if I could just turn it over to them and we'll just see what they have kind of proposed in that area. Tyson?
I'm glad to hear that your measures are going so well, but I was hoping that.
We still want them to do it.
I do too.
That's all it is.
That's always the $1 million question. So yeah, in talking with Brian, what we did is we kind of went through the transportation plan that SRF did. And basically what that plan laid out was some analysis based on improvements that the school could do, short-term, long-term. And what I threw up on the board here that kind of we would run off of is SRF's recommended long-term alternative number 1. So I'm guessing everybody's fairly familiar with this, which would be the roundabout that would be proposed at Fryeburg and Randolph. Before I get too far in, I better introduce Kate Miners with Stonebrook. More Engineering and Stonebrook are teaming together, I guess, for this project. They have a ton of roundabout experience in Minnesota. When we start to flip through the slides, I'm hoping to keep this fairly light, and if you've got questions, we'll just kind of keep the dialogue going, but I'll have her interject when we start popping through the slides. Dan Hansen's also in our office in Fergus Falls here as well. So kind of going back to SRF's slide, they're proposing that mini roundabout at that intersection, and then they had looked at the expansion of the school's parking lot. Really, for the purposes of what our proposal is we're only looking at what would be done within the right of way. Although we would take into consideration what's happening at the school, but we would just be focusing on the roundabout and the actual traffic movements that would be impacted at that intersection. I'll kind of go through a few different examples with respect to this. If the council wanted to move forward and this project goes, what we're proposing is a preliminary engineering report. What that preliminary engineering report would entail is kind of quite a few different components. Those would be the report itself. We'd have a traffic analysis that would go with it, and that traffic analysis would actually piggyback off of the information that SRF gave, but would also give us a defined level of service and warrant if a mini is the best solution here, or if we need a standard roundabout. Basically looking at that larger roundabout. And the reason for that is the last thing we want to do is in 5 years or 6 years or 10 years down the road, you have a major investment in this intersection, and what we have doesn't meet the level of service anymore. So that's what that traffic analysis is for. We're actually also looking at doing a preliminary design component with this. So really when I'm saying preliminary engineering report, we're getting quite a ways through the preliminary design. We'd go out and do the actual topographic survey, do the layouts for the preferred alternative based on what that traffic analysis would recommend. We'd also price out, estimates for the roundabout, for the mini. And then we'd have stakeholder meetings that would ride with that so that we're getting input and we're having dialogue all the way through. So I say engineering report, but what I'm really saying is we'd be getting into a preliminary design. So when you got to that point, you'd actually have something that would work, and that investment would actually move right to the final design if you proceeded to move forward to actually build it. So it's not that money's lost in the study and you've got to pick it up and now take another step, and you keep studying it and then take another step. This would actually get us to a point where we've got pretty concrete design, and that design is could be picked up. You're going to be able to use that to move forward and get into final. It would take us right into construction. The schedule for this, to get through this report, we'd probably be looking at about April, March or April, probably towards the better part of April, to get through that study. Construction we wouldn't even try for a 19 season. And the reason being, because if we can't get out of the gate right away, we'd never hit the school, by the time school got back into session. And so the last thing we want to do is let this project for construction in a June timeframe and then not finish it till November. So this would be a 2020 project more than likely. I guess what I'll also go through is a few of the different examples we've got.
Can I just add one thing on that preliminary design? The preliminary design I think that we're proposing is full preliminary design. I don't know how better to explain that other than lots of times we'll do a preliminary design and kind of this feasibility. Is it feasible? Does it work? And we'll look at horizontal geometry. The scope that we've put together for this takes us through even the vertical components, because this area has so much vertical components to it. You've got the parking lot on the west side that sits south, that sits low, and then you have the hill on the other side. So what we're proposing is to look at that and then drainage also with that. And a lot of times with a preliminary concept design, we don't take it that far, but I think for this, and that's where Tyson was saying this will roll right into final design, because we're taking it that far, or proposing to take it that far.
Utility considerations will be taken into account. So if we got to relocate sewer, water, storm, if we've got to do any ponding because of water treatment, water quality issues, those things all get taken into account as we do this study. preliminary design.
Will you be doing any soil sampling then to see if it's?
One thing, I mean, we aren't proposing to do soil borings yet. That'd be a next step, but we are looking to do topography through basically that whole corridor. And that helps with the vertical. You know, it's one thing we could easily supplement with a geotechnical. That wouldn't really be too big of an issue to just add that in if we went forward.
I would just, because that is one of the frustrating things, is like we get a report and then we have to do another report to get the report, you know, to be meaningful. So when you say, you know, we want to move from, you know, this would be a design that would move from this to being able to bid it and construct it would be more appealing than coming back for another report.
Study?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the geotechnical could definitely, I mean, we could add that in to supplement right in with, because it'd be data that would be helpful with the design.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That would be my concern, is if the soils come back with some negativity, then the preliminary design is got the potential of error.
Well, and then it's price sensitive too. You know, the other thing is that what we'd be trying to strive for in this would be to give you a pretty firm, it'd be a very firm estimate of what this roundabout would cost, or what the alternative would cost, whether it's a standard or a mini. And a mini may work. We've had discussions on whether or not that would work, but based on, until we looked at kind of a traffic analysis as a part of this, we're not sure.
On the
That's
traffic analysis, obviously, the other item on the agenda is available properties for future school building. Obviously, if you go to a different premise, what kind of happens with, you know, this in terms of numbers of students?
Students will still be in Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of students.
I do think one issue that would change is, hopefully, is the age of the students. So
Right.
they're kind of dependent on drop off and pickup. You know, this would be more of a high school, middle school type, and a lot of the elementary age that we have in there now would probably, you know, be alleviated, so.
But on the turnabout, even if we do have older students or whatever, our population is scooting up, the larger numbers of classes, and so we're still gonna have more kids, even if we, you know, by population, if we eliminate a grade level or two to a location, so.
In the Fur Avenue, you know, there's another consideration. I've been up there, and I'm assuming that there was a board decision to say, let's look at the roundabout, right? Was that originally, or was that staff, or was the board, school board
This is
decision?
from the study.
Okay, and then now saying, no, we don't need it. I think that's what I heard you say, right?
No, we said we don't want to
It's
pay
not
for it.
Pay for it. I don't think anybody wants to necessarily pay for it. But when I'm up on Fur Avenue, and if the second item on the agenda too, and to Kyle's point and Anthony's point, the available properties for future use, if we pour more people going down Fur Avenue and coming back out of town on Fur Avenue, that is a real backup there at what we call Fergus rush hour. If you've ever sat on Fur Avenue and waited to get on to Fryeburg or looked at that intersection. So I'm just thinking, if we're really going to be serving the best interests of the taxpayers, the school, and the future, a 10-year look at, and that's the second item too, but a 10-year look here before we say, yeah, I know we don't want to pay for it, but it may be something we have to say, yeah, this is going to be necessary based on increased numbers and traffic patterns, that we're just going to have to all get our heads together around this. I'd like to go forward a little more with that discussion, especially the next item too.
Many roundabouts, Chief, you just need to get a couple of cans of paint and pretty fun.
Yeah.
Which side of the pond you're on.
Well, and that,
Yeah, luminous.
part of what we have the luxury in Fergus of, we have a lot of unique intersections in town.
Unique is a good word.
And this is one of them. And so whether the county is, you know, I think the county is moving forward and they're looking at alternatives to some of those issues and the challenges that they have on their routes. that would kind of dovetail into probably a few that the city has. You know, obviously, this is one of those slightly unique intersections where you've got the school campus, you get high peak times, you get consolidated traffic, and then you have this nice irregular intersection. And even, you know, depending on what we'd have to do to even make a mini fit that, you know, I guess would be something that would come out of this study.
One thing that the study I don't think they took time is we have almost 100 nights a year of major traffic at 9, 10 o'clock at night, depending when it's getting at, and graduations and concerts and, you know, ball games after ball games after ball games, you know, all year. So I don't think the study took that into account. So when we were looking at warrants for the need for this, I don't think it's there. It's more than just 8 o'clock to 8:30 and 3:30 or 3:15 to 3:45. There's a lot of needs. We host a lot of these events.
Yeah. And that is an important note to mention, is that this report was based on peak times AM and PM, and that was really the extent of it. So they didn't take into account anything outside of those windows. They kind of put the blinders on and then looked at what the warrants are at those peak intervals. So kind of the rest of the slides really kind of roll into different roundabout alternative or different roundabout projects that we've done. And we can go through basically a lot of pretty pictures for you to say, hey, look at the roundabouts. If you want to flip through them, a few of the ones that we can highlight on. If you go back up to a few of the ones we'll highlight on our actual roundabouts that are going in past schools. That if you go up about 3, right there. Good.
One more.
Down one more. That was Bemidji, right?
Yep.
Do you want to talk to that one, Kate?
This one is St. Peter.
There.
This one is in Beltrami, yep, in Bemidji. So this is a project that we did. It's somewhat similar as far as the traffic analysis that was done. There were schools in the area, 2 of the intersections, and that's really hard to see, and I apologize for that, but there's 4 intersections along here that actually are being reconstructed into roundabouts. 2 of those intersections are actually accesses into schools. So again, when we did the analysis for this, this is in construction phase and actually kind of phase 2 of this project. But when we did the traffic analysis for this, it was kind of the same thing. Looking at those peak times, looking at those event times, and you know, it's a roundabout the right thing to do when it's high school drivers and young drivers, you know, and did the whole education piece along with that. So pretty similar to what's going on, you know, with this corridor, with the schools right there and the different variety of drivers and whatnot.
So this is done, you said? Or
this is in construction, and phase 2 of design has started with us. So, yeah.
Does the mini versus the standard roundabout, is that about traffic count? Is it about available real estate, or is it only traffic?
So, and that's one of the reasons I think that we have with the preliminary design yet a little bit more of a traffic component to it. There's a couple things that I feel need to be looked at before we would be comfortable saying a mini is the right answer. Real estate, yes. So if you're trying to save real estate, and we can work those, but this report doesn't show any of exactly what you guys were just talking about. What does our future volumes tell us? So, and a mini has less capacity than a regular size roundabout does. So we want to look into the future, preferably, you know, 20 years. We can look at that, 10 possibly, but for sure 20 years into the future, and say, does a mini work in 20 years? Because we don't want to make that investment and then have to come back even before the roadway is, you know, at its useful life. So I think that's one of the big things that we looked at and said, you know, let's make sure the mini's the right thing. There's not a lot of minis in the state. They're still going in. We're still analyzing them. The few that I've been involved with and have been tracking, they have had an increase in crashes. But there's been design changes that have come into place, so I think we want to take a look at some of that stuff before we would just say jump in and say yes, a mini, especially with a school in the area, is the right answer. Now, I say there's an increase in crashes, but you have to remember they're very low severity crashes. They're property, they're fender benders, they're, you know, those kind of crashes. So,
Sorry, are you saying that's with the minis versus the big ones?
correct, yep, yep.
Is there physical, I mean, I know that there's less, but there's still, is there a physical component to the mini?
Yes, there is, yep. So it's just all a little bit smaller,
It's
but
smaller.
there's still a raised median. The difference is a regular roundabout has a truck apron that is meant for big trucks, and cars can do it too, but to drag their wheels over, and then there's a area in the center of that, you know, that's kind of mounded up a little bit, that people don't drive over. The mini basically shrinks all that down, and the whole island in the middle is mountable. So essentially a truck really almost drives straight through, if you will. And
There
uses
are a
a
lot of
whole-
trucks coming in that direction, farm trucks and different things like that coming in that
Yep.
direction that this would affect,
Sure.
in addition to the school buses too.
Yep. So, and both a mini and a regular roundabout would handle, for sure, bus traffic. And the farm equipment's a little bit different story sometimes,
Fall season now
but,
especially too,
right.
with the farm trucks.
yeah.
These ones here, are these are regular?
These are all regular, yep. Single lane.
So have you guys done any that are completed by schools? I mean, any roundabouts that are done by the
Yep,
schools?
so if you
I'm
go
just curious
to-
what the feedback
Down
is.
If you go to the next picture, so this one was built and we designed in St. Peter, Minnesota. And this one actually opened in conjunction with their brand new high school opening. We've had great feedback from that. The city loves that design. They've had zero problems, zero crashes down there. It's been a good one, so.
No, is that a full?
That's a
roundabout?
full
Is that-
size, correct, that's a full size, yep.
You can get a couple, 3 cars, I mean, full, right, or maybe even more than that.
Around the inside,
Yeah.
inside the roundabout,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
How many can you get in a mini, just one at a time or 2?
Probably, physically, you could probably fit 3 or 4. You're probably only gonna get 2 in there as far as people's comfort level. Once you shrink that size down, part of the problem I think that they're having with those minis is they are so small that they don't accommodate everybody, because you can't tell where everybody's going and you don't have the time to fit in there. You don't know if they're gonna go straight or if they're gonna keep coming, and you don't have the time to make those decisions. So I would say you're probably physically getting 2 cars in a mini roundabout if I were to.
And you're saying 2 cars navigating the roundabout, just so we're not confusing lanes within the roundabout? And
True, good point, yep.
And how many cars are actually
Yep.
just flowing through that intersection, or through that roundabout? Because you can get some that'll have 2 lanes, and, I mean, you got cars moving in every direction.
For a regular roundabout,
On
yeah.
a regular size, so,
Part
just,
of that is education. I mean, it's just knowing how to use a roundabout.
Absolutely.
And how to indicate.
Yep.
I mean, people in Fergus don't indicate when they're going around the roundabout.
Yep.
I think a lot of the time.
you throw for a loop, you put it
Yeah, your left blinker.
I don't know that any of us are, you know, qualified to make a determination about mini versus other. I think at least from my standpoint, our time is best used on trying to figure out the 10 and the longer, the patterns
Yeah.
that we're looking at possibly. It's interesting, but I don't think any of us are gonna tell, you know, is it a mini or not, you know?
Well,
or
and I
know
think
what a
we'll
mini
be able
is.
to guide you on that and give you some
Yeah.
recommendations.
So,
You know, we'll work
yes.
with you on what those future numbers look like based on, you know, historical growth in the area, based on what we know is gonna be developed in the area. And then we can help guide you with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of, you know, what we would be proposing to help you with.
All right, thanks, you guys. So should we move along to the available properties for future school building site?
Sure, we just want to keep, we still have this on the agenda, you know, just to make sure that, you know, we have Adams in our McKinley building, our Adams building, our 1937 buildings. And so at some point, I think the district is interested in acquiring property for future use. And I said this before, but I was looking at the Moorhead example of how They worked with the city to determine a good spot for their elementary schools, their middle school, to enhance the city in growth. And they are going from 5,500 students to 7,400 students in the next 10 years. So they are having growth. So we just want to make sure that we're in sync on where's the best site for a new elementary building? Where should it be, near M State or the RTC or by the Prairie Wetlands? We just want to make sure we're planning with you and are very much together on this site.
Did you say 10 years, is that?
Oh, I think we're looking at sooner than that, just because we're at 10 sections in our kindergarten. We'll probably not fit everybody in kindergarten, first and second. I don't think they fit in McKinley and Adams next year. So we might have to jump to Cleveland. We've already moved the 5th grade to Kennedy to make room for that. So we have room in our 3 buildings, but that's the early indication. Is if we have 10 sections of kindergarten again, and then say 10 sections of kindergarten this year went to 9, and we're at 9 in first grade. All of a sudden we'll probably have all of our kindergarten in McKinley, part of our first grade in McKinley, the rest of the first grade in Adams, most of the second grade in Adams, but we'll probably have to have 2 sections of second grade possibly move up to Cleveland. That's the early indication right now of the size that we'll be at. So
Our schools are mostly built for 8-section grades, right? Like that's ideal, but so we're growing. It's a good problem to have.
Jerry, as you look at sites over, looking at your history and what you've seen, Prairie Wetlands has been a positive educational experience, that I understand. And maybe some students have actually engaged education more fully because of that. Is that fair to say? That it's been a
great project or learning environment for our students. The issue with that site, it's 33 acres, I believe, and I wonder if it won't be less. I think there's some building going on. So,
are you talking about northwest of the?
We're talking right west of Hilltop Church, right across the north side of Highway 210.
Right.
So the issue becomes what size are we going to build an elementary? So if we're building a K6, we're talking 1,400 students. So if you're doing a K5, 1,200. So we're talking.
You're aware there's a 70-acre site to the west.
I am not aware of that. No.
So that's also available on the table in my mind.
Oh.
And
no one's told us about that.
West of the Prairie?
Yeah.
It's on the land, isn't it?
No. What's
the water pressure on the west side of the 210?
West side of 210.
Yeah, okay.
Glenn Robinson's. No, so, and the reason for my question when we talk about meeting together, which is great, to collaborate, that in my mind, the advertising of that program that you have is a win-win for all of us. It's something that parents could conceivably move to Fergus Falls because they know there's a program that engages their child, maybe the only one in the nation because we have the only kind of center like this in the nation, that would truly cause people to even want to move to Fergus because, hey, if I can run my business out of here. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix that we should be thinking, I believe, something along those lines as well.
We have not settled on any place. We're just coming to you saying we're open to looking at sites. I wonder if, Lynn, can you call that up by any chance?
Hey Jerry, so for K6, how many acres do you need? What's the site for 1,400 students or K6? How many acres?
Mark, do you remember that number? No, I don't. Yeah. I would say it would be 50 plus if we had 1,400 students.
Keep in mind with the Prairie too, I mean, that, to advertise it as something that all students can go to, we can only handle so many students out there, so it wouldn't be something where we could send 2 students out to dinner.
Right, I'm well aware of that, and I've talked to Dave Ellis about it actually at length, and understanding that there is a possibility that that could grow to some extent. Not everyone can do it. But I'm just saying that as we look to the future of Fergus and the win-win, I think it is a very positive component of planning for a 10-year.
Well, if you had an elementary building across the street, that changes, that's a game changer for the number of people that can access and the number of teachers that would want to access the Prairie. That whole program could be looking differently.
And then I was down in Alabama at high school and expansion of another high school possibility there. And I just think about our future and that location close to interstate. It makes me want to explore it more with the school board and discussions of what components do really go into this long term. In addition to your immediate needs, I understand that's present, but.
You know, we fit in our existing buildings right now. But the future, again, the 1937 buildings and the future needs of our district. But the short term, we're fitting in our buildings. It's not ideal when we split classes. The ideal would be to have all those classes in those same buildings. So you have all the kindergarten in the same building, all the first grade. You know, that has been a great learning tool for our teachers and for our students, where we have perfectly balanced sections. All of our teachers are in the same building. They're having lunch together, they're having a professional conversation. It's worked very well for us.
Now, I lived down in Forest Lake for quite a while. Forest Lake expanded just nonstop. Every time you turn around, they were building a new school. And one of the things they were looking at when they were going to build the schools is, so we don't have to keep on building and building and building, they were looking at the possibility of building schools where if the need grows and they need to expand, they can actually, the building was built in such a way where they can go up. So they need to be able to put the structures and everything in there. That way we're not looking at anything more than what it takes to go upwards and then still be able to use and maintain the same amount of space.
If we had 70 acres, you could actually, extend onto the building, not going up or go both. So
yeah.
When we were looking at Cleveland at some point, we were looking, could we go up? And on the 1957, we couldn't. And even on the 2008.
Any future buildings that we look at building, is that something that they're looking at?
Definitely.
Part of the issue with that is, I just found the worksheet here, is yes, you can go up, but you also have to have the space to support it.
Yeah.
So you have to have that initial massive area.
I mean, but yeah, take that in consideration when you're building it.
Exactly.
Make sure that you have enough acreage around you to be able to accommodate that, so we're not, saying, okay, we've outgrown this one, okay, we need some more land, let's go over here.
Right.
Let's look into the future saying, okay, we've got this land we got to maintain, but in the future, if we need be, then we only need to go up and then be able to utilize the land to go with it.
Starting fresh on a new site allows you to plan for those, it allows you to plan for security. Right now at Kennedy, vehicles are allowed to be way too close to the building. They should be farther away from the building, walk up to the building. There's lots of things we could change for better security, better traffic flow, all of those things would be enhanced by a new facility.
Another educational part, I was sitting with some park and rec people at the state level about 2 weeks ago, and they brought up the learning enhancement of natural playgrounds over square structured pipe, all the that I grew up with. And they were showing examples of using wood and other natural materials and what the effect that has on the students' learning. And as I look at the trends where we're, the interest in natural resources and how that is really lifelong learning introduction, how, what happens. And I looked at the Prairie Wetlands Learning Center and think, well, maybe there's also some synergy there where you might even have some federal, initiatives to increase some of that learning there on a level that would benefit also the school. So having it across, like you say, it could be a game changer, and it's a bigger discussion, but it's very enticing to think about that some of that synergy could play both ways for the center and for the
Most of our other most of our classrooms that are not located at Prairie, they're going out there monthly or quarterly. So we have, because it's so close, that's just the biggest advantage for us. So we have a number of other students that are able to access the Prairie just because we're so close.
But that 70-acre tract of land, is that something that he's willing to sell? I mean, that.
I can't speak for that, but it's there. And so.
And then part of it too is, does the city have the infrastructure there to support that? Because if it's just a gravel road now, at some point in time, there'll have to be better water, better streets, does it fit with the fire and police safety and all of that.
Water pressure.
I don't want to sit here and say 70 acres, yeah, ooh, we've got a solution, without looking at the city to make sure it's workable.
Maybe we must share. That'll work. Be a win-win.
I still have a pump in my place.
Yeah, I don't know if siting issues, how much they come into a discussion. I was thinking this is largely about long-term needs versus values, and then siting follows. I just wanted to say that site is there that I don't think we've talked about at all, so.
Is there a date you're thinking of when you make a decision? Is it 2 years down the road, or is it 1 year down the road, or is it 3 years? We don't have that date in mind, but we're in ongoing discussions. Almost every work session we have, we'll be talking about the long-term facilities that needs and working through.
One of the things we were looking at was, we sold bonds back in 2017, and when those bonds cease in 2027, then it would be just a natural flow that there wouldn't be any increase in tax potentially, that kind of thing. It would just start a new set of bonds. So that kind of gives you your deadline, but of course planning is 99% of construction, so it takes a long time to get there. And it may seem like a long ways away, but really it's not.
Put that goal up on your calendar, just kind of keep an eye on it.
And just an update, also, speaking of construction, so the early childhood center that we're working on with at the Heritage Building, the old Pomida Building. So right now, Children's Corner is, we're planning on partnering. They are writing, the school district is part of that, a Bremer grant. We've also looking at a Vadine grant for construction. So the idea, I think I've shared this before, but I'll repeat it, is right now, early childhood out of preschool is on the east side of that building. The district would be moving to the west side, and where the library currently is, that's where Children's Corner would be. So we're looking at expanding offerings both for Otter Preschool and also Children's Corner. I'll let them speak to their expansion, but to help meet the needs of the community. So we're hoping, I think it's November 28th that Bremer is doing a site visit here. Hopefully we'll learn soon thereafter whether we receive that grant. Children's Corner is the main focus of that grant. And a lot of that is for the build out of the remodel that we need. So anything that we can have in grants to help with the build out would lessen the cost for the lease over the lifetime of that. So we're actively looking at that, and the later it gets, everybody knows, the later we get, whether we'll start on day one of first day of school next year, depends on how soon we start after the first of the year. So I think the library is on track for moving out, so we're hoping to be moving forward with construction as soon as we can, following the library moving into their new site. The other thing that, if you remember our long-term facility that we shared with you, is the other thing is about our Roosevelt Education Center, our rec, the old high school. So we're looking at the old gym, if you will, the Otter Gym is how we named that. Lack of usage, a lot of times that's not good for water pipes. If you don't use them, they're not good. So we're looking at getting our both locker rooms online. We're using that for football, gymnastics. It's still if you haven't been in the Roosevelt Education Center, that's a hockey place. I mean, between the rinks and the gym with gymnastics, and then the ALC is there, our vocational wing, our community ed is there, our online school offices are there. 544 Education Foundation is there. We have a lot happening, but we've looked at how do we get the gym up to speed with restrooms, locker rooms, looking at light remodel of the ALC, which is the old science wing. For those of you that went to school there, the old science wing that was added in '93, updating that. And then the media center is a very, very large area that we could probably get 6 to 7 classrooms out of that media center. So we're looking at that. So over the next year to 3 years, we're looking at getting that space up to speed. So our idea is to maximize use of all of our facilities that we currently have before we build something else. And I think that's a wise thing to do prior to going out for any building bond. We have to make sure we're utilizing everything that we have really well, and then if the need presents itself, Fergus Falls is very receptive when you present a need that is well thought out and well planned. So that's the goal where we're at.
Jerry, I've been asked about year-round ice with the new coolers. Do we have the capacity? Will we have the capacity to have?
I'll let
ice
Mark
in the
answer that one.
We're getting there. I don't have a date yet on when it will happen, but last I heard, well, it was actually a voicemail today, is that the plans are down with the state, and they're trying to decide whether it's going to be a state project in terms of inspections and stuff, or a city. So we should know, and I've been told that the chiller has been refurbished, it's ready to go. We just get the approval, and it can start to be installed. I'm hoping that's within weeks, not months.
Its capacity though is about 3 times what we thought it was originally, right?
Approximately, yeah. We were thinking it was like 110 or something like that, and it's more like 300 tons. It's a lot of capacity.
So maximizing spaces, I think it's wonderful to think about the potential of using it, not having to have those sitting there, not being used all year round when getting reset programming.
So the question I have moving forward is just who would you like us to meet with on your staff and we're on working at looking at building sites options for us? Who do you want? I see a new planner over there. I know he's going to be involved. I guess we have a buildings and grounds committee. I guess so we're open to meeting just so we're keeping moving. And that's the idea here is let's get some focus. So purchasing property, the right property, could happen anytime, year or two, whatever, just so everybody knows we're planning and moving forward.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anyone else, any other questions?
Well, is the roundabout study on for sure for the spring? Or is potential for spring? Brian, what's your thought on that?
That would be contingent council authorization, so if I hear, I think I would present it to the next committee or council and to get their authorization.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify in my head where we left that, just so I could, just track it.
And I'll just add to that, I think, in all fairness, the priority of the roundabout is kind of in limbo as we made some changes. I think, I don't think anyone would argue that ideally we need a roundabout there, but where does that, just as it's changed on your priority list, it's probably changed a little bit on our priority list, but I don't think anyone here would argue that ideally at some point the roundabout would be the best solution.
Yeah.
Especially since you don't want to pay for it.
What with us that want to spend kids?
I don't really believe in beating around the bush, to be honest. So you might not like it, but at least you know.
All right. Anything else? Anybody?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.